If you've been seriously injured, your case could be worth millions, and Morgan & Morgan can help you fight for it if you become their client. They've won major verdicts, $12 million in Florida, $26 million in Philadelphia, crushing these lowball insurance company offers. It's free unless you win, and you can start your claim now at forthepeople.com/Pakman, or scan the QR code on the screen, or click the link in the description. Morgan & Morgan, for the people. Welcome to the show. Major foreign policy news with potentially catastrophic implications today. Something light to start the show with, right? For the first time since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, a NATO country has fired in self-defense. What happened is that Poland says 19 drones entered its airspace during a Russian strike on Ukraine. Polish forces shot down those that posed a threat. This is not like a minor border incident the way we've sometimes heard about and read about. Poland's prime minister says this is a large-scale provocation. It has triggered Article 4 of the NATO treaty, which demands urgent consultations with all member countries. The Polish prime minister is saying this is the closest we have been to war since World War II. Now, this is not only our primary concern is we don't want anybody hurt. We don't want anybody killed. By the way, the death toll in this Russian invasion of Ukraine has reached completely unconscionable numbers. I mean, just dwarfing anything going on globally since 2022. And there is, after the humanitarian concern, a foreign policy concern, a domestic concern, a NATO concern. This is the kind of crisis that NATO was created to address. The whole point of NATO is collective defense, shared deterrence, strength in numbers. But right now, the most powerful member of NATO, the United States, is led by Donald Trump. Donald Trump is skeptical of these sort of shared defense treaties. Donald Trump has spent years insulting NATO allies. Donald Trump has questioned, why should we even defend anybody? He has sometimes publicly sided with Vladimir Putin, and he has talked about who's paying their fair share and who isn't. So you've got European leaders saying we need unity. This is an urgent situation. They're talking about sanctions. They're talking about readiness. They're talking about putting more pressure on Russia. But from Trump so far, we have heard nothing meaningful. Trump went to a restaurant in D.C. last night, was booed mercilessly, asked about what's going on in Poland, and said nothing. And arguably, the part that really matters here is respect. And this is not like authoritarian. Have you said thank you? Do you respect? What I mean is, does Putin respect Trump? Do the member nations of NATO respect Trump? Putin is testing, and Putin has tested American presidents before. Under Obama, the test was Crimea. Under Biden, it was the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And now under Trump, it's direct violations of NATO territory. Is Trump going to have the testicular fortitude or even the interest in doing anything here? Because just a couple of weeks after Trump welcomed Putin to the United States in that totally farcical Alaska summit, they shook hands. They smiled for the cameras. Trump was barely able to walk in a straight line on the red carpet, but he still laid out the red carpet. Just weeks after that, and by the way, weeks after we asked, have you asked Putin for any concessions? Has Putin agreed to any concessions? We didn't really get reasonable answers to any of that. Just weeks after that, Russian drones fly into Polish airspace. Do you believe that that's a coincidence? Putin either knows or strongly suspects that Trump is not going to act decisively. And why would he? Trump is enamored with Vladimir Putin. Trump is impressed by the sort of authoritarian, dictatorial power of Vladimir Putin. He knows, Putin does, that Trump doesn't really value the NATO promise that if you attack one country, you're really attacking all of the countries. Trump has said it's a bad deal. He said everybody needs to pay up before we defend anybody. So the whole point of the alliance is shared defense. And Trump has turned it into a kind of shakedown where it's like, well, maybe. send in some more money or do this or do that. And in fact, under Trump, the peace president, remember, he's the guy with the peace president, we have seen Russian drone and missile launches increase dramatically. We have a chart on the screen showing you that. So that is not a sign that Vladimir Putin respects Donald Trump or fears Donald Trump in any way. We have everybody right now asking the same question. Is Trump actually strong, or is the tough talk only an act? Strength is not about photo ops and loud threats. Strength is about showing that when allies are tested, the United States is going to show up. And history tells us that these moments can be turning points. I hope we're not heading to World War III. You know, there are commentators, analysts, pundits, as many people incorrectly pronounce it, who have been saying for a decade we're on the brink of World War III, or for 2 decades. I'm not saying we're on the brink of World War III, but the Polish leader has said this is the closest we have been to war since World War II. Now, when you think about NATO, NATO's credibility only works if adversaries believe it will respond as one. If that belief collapses, deterrence collapses. And so this is a test for Donald Trump, not only insofar as is he going to be there in terms of American responsibilities in this instance, what would it signal to authoritarians and autocrats around the world more generally about the future if Donald Trump goes, Right now, Poland is calling for greater NATO support. Europe is moving quickly. Trump so far is standing still. And if he continues to stand still, it's going to be weakness. Now, this doesn't mean Trump launches a war. That's not what we're talking about. Right now, it's not even about that. Putin doesn't even think Trump gives a damn about this. The question is Trump even going to signal, hey, we are part of this shared defense agreement. We are going to uphold our responsibilities there. So the question of whether Putin respects Trump, that question is gone. The answer is no. The remaining question is, does anyone respect Donald Trump? And we may find out very, very soon. Trump has found a way to make the Epstein scandal even worse. When Trump was asked about this by NBC News yesterday, after the letter with Trump's signature to Jeffrey Epstein was published by the Wall Street Journal, Trump was asked about this by NBC News. He says it is a dead issue, and he refused to talk about it. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee released this alleged birthday letter that Trump sent to Jeffrey Epstein for his 50th birthday in 2003. This is a letter that Donald Trump previously denied existed. It appears to have Donald Trump's name written in the pubic area of a drawing of a woman, naked woman. Some are saying, this is a naked girl. The text says that we have certain things in common, Jeffrey, and ends with a pal is a wonderful thing. May every day be another wonderful secret. Now, the White House has said the signature doesn't match Trump's current signature, but we're going to hear from a handwriting expert later in the show. Earlier signatures contemporaneous to this one, including one from a letter released by attorney George Conway, who's been on this show, show that at the time that is what Donald Trump's signature looked like. Trump's public response, after it becomes apparently undeniable that Donald Trump did do the thing he denied doing, Trump's response was to call it a dead issue and to say he's not going to talk about it. Now, when a letter like this comes out, I am not an expert in PR. The last 2 weeks, I think, proved that. When a letter like this comes out, it seems to me that it's a bad idea to look away and say nothing after you've already denied its existence. You say it doesn't exist, then it comes out, now you say nothing. If it were fake, you would expect like this furious, detailed denial. Trump now has gone silent, and that really suggests he has no defense here. And so the fallout is growing. You've got some of Donald Trump's own MAGA allies. We've talked about Marjorie Taylor Greene before, Nancy Mace. They are now joining the call for the Epstein files. This is more than a minor crack in this loyalty wall that Donald Trump has built. The wall is sort of collapsing in real time. Trump is desperate for the story to die. His silence now is going to make it louder. And it's, by the way, note to Democrats on this. I saw some of these comments online. If your primary reaction to the Epstein letter is that it's sexist, that the drawing is crude, lewd, and sexist, you're blowing it. Like, of course the letter is crude and disgusting. But the political kill shot is not about whether Trump is sexist. We knew about Trump and misogyny a decade ago, and everybody already knows about it. It's not news. Voters didn't care in 2016. They didn't care in 2020. They didn't care in 2024. It is not going to move the needle to go, oh, look at this sexist letter. The smart play is to focus on what Trump's response tells us, that he calls it a dead issue and he's refusing to answer questions. And the denials make it abundantly clear that he's terrified about this. This is the behavior of someone with something to hide. So the sexism does not seem to be the right play here. If this were fake, we would be seeing a different reaction. Trump is hoping silence will make it go away. And Democrats should be hammering on the evasiveness, hammering on no innocent person would behave the way Trump has behaved over the last 3 months when it comes to this issue. The pointing to the sexist angle has already failed Democrats for a decade. And so you've got to approach it from a different perspective. Now, there are a number of other elements to this. One is who from MAGA will stick with Trump versus who will abandon Trump. We're going to deal with that a little bit later in the show. Another aspect to this is, can we just get the handwriting part out of the way? Because you've still got people all the way up to J.D. Vance, the vice president himself, Caroline Leavitt, saying it's simply a fake. It is a fraud. It is not Trump's handwriting. We're going to hear from a handwriting expert who says this is just undeniable. So hopefully that part can be put to bed. And then we have the question of, is it even possible that Trump will succeed on blocking this vote in the House to release the Epstein files? The latest calculus, the latest sort of whipping of the votes, colloquially speaking, is that this may be a battle Trump cannot win, and the vote is going to happen. And every Republican is going to be on record. Do you want the Epstein files out or don't you? So much of that later today, some of it tomorrow. We will get to what we can't get to today. I will also be joined later by Dan Pfeiffer from Pod Save America. Looking forward to that. If you've been seriously injured in a car crash, a fall, whatever it might be, you might be entitled to more than you think, because insurance companies are trained to lowball you. That is why people turn to Morgan & Morgan, which is America's largest injury law firm. They've helped clients win millions, 12 million in Florida, 34 times the highest insurance offer that they got, $26 million in Philadelphia. That was 40 times more than the insurer offered up front. And the best part is you pay nothing unless they win your case. No hourly fees, no upfront costs. If you don't win, you don't pay. Filing claims is quick and easy. Morgan & Morgan has modernized the process so you can start and manage your case right from your phone. So if you've been hurt, don't guess about what your case is worth. Find out. You can start your claim at forthepeople.com/Pakman, or just scan the QR code on the screen. Because fighting these big insurance companies does take a big law firm, and that is Morgan & Morgan for the people. A lot of people think identity theft is something that only happens when someone hacks into your account, but the truth is that it usually starts with your personal information being posted online by data brokers where anybody can find it. Our sponsor, Incogni, is a service that helps protect your privacy by forcing the data brokers to delete your information. This includes your name, address, phone number, even sensitive things like property records or your political affiliation. And now with their custom removals feature included in the unlimited plan, you're not limited to just the list of 250 plus brokers they work with by default. If you find any site exposing any of your private information, even one they've never seen before, you can send a link and Incogni's team will work to get that removed. This is serious protection for you and your family against identity theft, against fraud, doxing, harassment, and Incogni's data removal process is the only one independently verified by Deloitte. Get 60% off an annual plan when you visit incogni.com/Pakman and use the code Pakman. The link is in the description. The David Pakman Show is proudly, primarily funded by our audience. We don't get cable carriage fees like Fox News. We don't get any of that stuff. We've got ad revenue, and of course, we have memberships. You can sign up for a membership at joinpakman.com if you want the extra audio-visual content. You can get a Substack premium membership at substack.davidpakman.com if you prefer additional written content. We also do Q&As on Substack, where paid subscribers can submit questions, which I will answer, or be a gold member. This is much better than Trump's $5 million gold card for foreign rich people to get citizenship. You can become a member on both the website and on Substack. We call it gold membership because I'm very uncreative and have come up with no better name for it. But if someone has a better name idea for that, please let me know. Joinpakman.com, substack.davidpakman.com. Is Donald Trump's worst lie ever the claim he made yesterday out and about in Washington, D.C., that the Epstein letter that has now been released is neither his signature, nor his drawing, nor his writing? Let's listen to what Donald Trump said. The only statement he has made, he has since gone mum and told NBC News, it's a dead issue. I'm not going to talk about it. Here is Trump. Listen to the number of different claims he makes about the letter.
Thank you. Enjoy it.
You signed the Epstein birthday letter.
It's not my signature, and it's not the way I speak. And anybody that's covered me for a long time know that's not my language. It's nonsense. And frankly, you're wasting your time. All you do is trying to get off the great success of D.C. and about 200 other things we've done that are so successful.
If only the reporters would stop questioning Trump about his obvious, brazen, defiant lies and ask him about, oh, sir, the streets are so clean. The National Guard did such a nice job mulching. Sir, is that weird? How did you choose black mulch? We love it. If it weren't for that, then we would be far better off, says Donald Trump, if it weren't for the reporters asking about the Epstein thing. Now, there's a couple different things to consider here, and we've got the letter, the drawing. We're going to put it up on the screen. There's sort of like three elements here. There is the text, there is the signature, and there is the silhouette of a woman or girl, depending on your perspective. The signature very clearly seems to be Donald Trump's. We're going to hear from a handwriting expert in a moment. The drawing, I mean, I don't know. Trump is a known doodler generically, so it doesn't seem completely implausible. And then this sort of, the writing, I don't really know as far as the writing goes. It says Donald or voiceover. There must be more to life than having everything. Donald, yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Epstein, nor will I, since I also know what it is. Donald, we have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, yes, we do, come to think of it. To me, it is kind of the way it is written in the way that Trump speaks. Trump uses the phrase, come to think of it. Trump, it seems to me that it's plausible that this is Trump's writing. Now, you do have to get to one of these sort of like what is more likely scenarios. Is it more likely that someone created this, making it look retroactively as if it was sent at the time, planted it, and Trump neither signed his name to it, drew it, or wrote it, or sent it, and it is some big conspiracy with all of the risk that comes with the fact that I spoke to a lawyer yesterday who said that publishing this, like the Wall Street Journal publishing this, doesn't seem to have any kind of criminal issue. Trump can sue for defamation, which he claims that he is doing, but criminally, the Wall Street Journal publishing this isn't an issue. But the person who created this, if they did make it up as Trump claims, might have criminal liability. Does it make sense that someone would do something for which they would have potential criminal liability? Or is the most likely explanation the simplest one, which is Trump did do this, and that's all. Trump did do this explains why Trump's signature is on it. It explains the reporting. It explains the release of this document. It explains the publicity around this document. It explains a lot of things. The simplest, the sort of casual Occam's razor. Or are we going into it was created by someone at significant risk that it would be found out? We know Trump is litigious. We know Trump would do everything he could legally, criminally, civilly if this was completely fabricated, and it would require so much advanced planning. Or did Trump just do it? Now, let's focus in specifically on the handwriting aspect of this. There are three elements, as I mentioned, to the Trump-Epstein letter to kind of analyze. There's the writing on the letter, there's the drawing on the letter, and there's the signature on the letter. I doubt you need to be convinced that it's Trump's signature, since we have already seen contemporaneous examples of Trump's signature. They're all exactly like this. Just to be thorough, let's hear from a handwriting expert on the signature.
My professional opinion, the chances of this not being his signature are too minuscule to talk about. The signature that came up last night purported to be Donald Trump. I can absolutely say it is Donald Trump, but it's very much the signature that Donald Trump had in the early 2000s as opposed to his signature now, because it's changed really quite a lot since he's become president. If we can compare it, this was purported to have been written in 2003, I believe, and this is 2000, so it's only 3 years apart, so it's relatively recent. If we look at the final stroke there, there's a very gentle going down of the stroke and then a long horizontal stroke, and it's exactly the same formation in this letter of 2000. We've got the very tall pointed upper zone strokes of the L and the D. And if we examine these under a microscope, which I have done, you would see that they were exactly the same. And the idea that it could be forged would be almost impossible. When I'm analysing somebody's handwriting, somebody's signature, the whole text, it's how they are at that time. It's, if you like, a snapshot of the personality in time. And we do change over time. Sometimes we change in minuscule ways. Even during the day, we can feel more tired or more upset about something, and I can see minor changes in the handwriting. However, with Donald Trump, there have been huge changes over the last 20 years. And the reason why it's changed now is he has had to become far more aggressive, far more adamant, far more absolutely assertive in every single thing that he says and he does, hence the total angularity of his writing.
I don't really, it's interesting that even Trump's signature changes, according to this expert, and I will be the first to tell you that this handwriting science stuff, there are elements of it that are very objective and hard and fast. The stuff about personality, I think, is considered more, a little bit speculative. According to this handwriting expert, the changes to Trump's signature over time reflect the changes to his personality that we have observed publicly. So listen, I think we can put to bed the argument that it's not Trump's signature. After my conversation with Dan Pfeiffer, we are going to hear Caroline Leavitt's explanation, which is, no, we've got experts who say it's absolutely not Trump's signature. You can evaluate and see who you believe, the handwriting expert or Caroline Leavitt. We'll evaluate that for ourselves. But at least as far as the signature, I think we can move on and say it's definitely Trump's signature. You then would have to argue, well, Trump's signature, it was almost like copy pasted onto the document. It is Trump. That'll be the next step, right? It is Trump's signature from that period of his life, but he didn't sign or make this document. They just placed his signature on it. They photoshopped it or something like that. So let's take a break. We're going to talk with Dan Pfeiffer, and then we will hear from Caroline Leavitt. I've been tracking my family tree for a long time now, and the service I've always relied on is MyHeritage, which I started using long before they became a sponsor. Trusted by over 90 million users, MyHeritage makes it easy and fun to build your family tree with a range of powerful genealogy tools at your fingertips. One of my favorite features lets you quickly find new family members and add entire new branches to your tree. It's always a good time to sit down with my family, show them what I found. For example, the other day, I found a scan of an immigration document from when my mother's uncle's aunt arrived at Ellis Island, or this document from the US-Canada border for my relative who was born in 1895. This is remarkable stuff and really interesting artifacts that are part of the puzzle of my family's past. MyHeritage gives you access to over 19 billion records like this, making it easier than ever for you to uncover amazing new pieces of your family's history. You can try MyHeritage completely free for 14 days when you go to davidpakman.com/myheritage. The link is in the description. Our sponsor, Magic Spoon, has been with us a long time. They do the high-protein, zero-sugar cereals and treats, nostalgically reinventing some of my favorite childhood snacks. Many of you know, for me, cereal was not breakfast, it was a snack, and that is still the case. And what Magic Spoon has done is taken your favorite sugary cereals from when you were a kid and turned them into something you can feel good about. Magic Spoon is also launching a brand new high-protein granola, true to the Magic Spoon promise, packed with protein, crunchy, 13 grams of protein, 0 added sugars, and in delicious flavors like dark chocolate almond, honey almond, and peanut butter. They've got their high-protein treats as well, crispy, crunchy, airy, with 12 grams of protein in many flavors. And of course, if you don't love Magic Spoon as much as I do and our team does, Magic Spoon will refund all of your money, no questions asked. Get $5 off your next order at magicspoon.com/Pakman, or look for Magic Spoon on Amazon or in your nearest grocery store. The link is in the description. I had a great conversation with Dan Pfeiffer from Pod Save America on my Substack Live. Make sure you're subscribed at substack.davidpakman.com so you can actually watch these live as they happen. Let's check out that conversation now. I am here today with Dan Pfeiffer from Pod Save America, a best-selling author in his own right, with numerous campaign credentials in his storied past. It's really good to have you. I'm glad to talk to you today.
It's great. I've been a big fan of yours for a long time, so I'm excited to do this.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. It's mutual. Well, listen, I mean, to start with, recent scandals notwithstanding, I've been more and more concerned and displeased, I think are the words I would say, with what I'm kind of seeing from the Democratic Party over the last year. And I did a piece recently where I kind of said, I was kind of optimistic after the failure in 24. Offices from, mayors all the way up to President Biden actually have been engaging more with independent media, trying to figure out what went wrong, cautiously optimistic. And I'm not super impressed with what's going on. It's still kind of like what I've identified as the same tired risk aversion and sort of lack of understanding for how to work with us. Not that independent media is how Democrats are going to win elections, but my point is, after everything that's happened, I'm feeling like not really that much has kind of changed, and Democrats are potentially just pointing in the same direction for 26 and 28 further away. Let me just open it to you. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think you're right. There was this moment where, and I think it was an oversimplification of the election, and it's sort of almost a crutch for political parties to be like, the problem was we didn't do enough podcasts, we didn't do enough YouTube shows, we didn't engage with independent media and content creators. Because if you pick that as the main, and I think that's all true. I think our media strategy was outdated. We needed to do more. We got dominated in the information space. That's all true. When you pick that as the primary reason, it allows you to align more challenging questions about what you actually stand for. Do you have anything to say when you go on independent media? I think that's one of the problems. I've been to meet with the House caucus. I've been to meet with the Senate caucus. I've talked to a bunch of politicians, and I'm going in, I'm doing presentations on podcasts and presentations on YouTube and how YouTube's the new TV and all of that. And they get it theoretically, they hear it. Some of them are truly shocked. I did one presentation that I pointed out just pretty simply that an individual episode of Pod Save America has twice the primetime audience of CNN, and you would have heard a pin drop in the room. So they're trying to get it, but I think the thing that is missing, and some of them are better than others, right? Sort of a younger generation of people who really get it. There's some, people with presidential ambitions like Newsom who are really aggressively doing some of the strategies. Is you kind of got to have something to say. You got to be willing, because you can't just take your CNN, MSNBC talking points and bring them to a 3-hour interview with Flagrant or to talk to you or to talk to us, because that's not what the audience is looking for. And so, yeah, I do worry that we are like appending on this new thing, like, which is like, we're going to do podcasts, we're going to do YouTube, we're going to talk to TikTokers, but we're adding it to this old playbook we've still had before, which is about more than just like where you say it. It's what you say and how you say it.
Yeah, there's a degree to which it's sort of like saying you're going to write a strongly worded letter.
Yes.
It's not going to work that much better on independent podcasts than it works anywhere. Is sort of, I think, what you're getting at.
Yeah.
I'm interested because you've clearly had more conversations from the point of view of like presenting than I have. I've had some conversations with members of the House and their staffs off air, for example, where I try to explain why it doesn't work for a not particularly well-known member of the House to come on my show and go through 6 topics in 12 minutes and then say, I got to run.
Yeah.
And part of it is I don't think my audience really connects with that in an authentic way. It's just sort of like, let me go through my bullet points. But also, I think a big aspect of what Trump and the right did really well in 2024 is it didn't feel as much as though there was a political agenda during some of these appearances, even though it obviously is political. There's a point here. We're running elections. But like when Trump went on with the Nelk boys, it was an atrocity from the standpoint of like, did he say things that were true and were they good ideas? But it seemed sort of unscripted, which it probably was.
Yeah.
It seemed like authentic Trump. He talked about things that weren't political. There was just something about it that connected with voters who are not already in the hyper-political space, which I think is also like another aspect of this, which is I can figure out 10 different ways to talk to my audience, but most of the country doesn't listen to overtly political content. And it seems that that's an area that the Democrats haven't yet really cracked.
Yeah, there's a real, like, one of the things that I try to tell Democrats is, one, like I said, like, you can't do your CNN thing on independent media. Like, that does not work. And you can't, and if you sound like a politician, like, these are people who are, it's not just people listening or watching us, it's people who, are on some of these, Barstool, Nelk Boys, more further left stuff, cultural stuff. These people have already opted out of the traditional way of getting their news. So they already bring to bear some sort of skepticism of politics and institutional, sort of the institutions around politics. And so if you just sound like a politician, you're not going to succeed. So I try to tell people sometimes what you're going to do. And this is a thing that Trump, I think, does well. I don't think it's a plan. It just happens is just like find, like, what are the things you care about that are not just politics that you can find a way to talk about, right? That could be sports. It could be reality TV. It could be movies. It could be books. It could be painting. Just where you can try to connect with people like on a human level. And this isn't rocket science, like, because this is, I mean, I always say that when I worked for President Obama, every year, no matter how busy we were, the thing he was like sacrosanct on the schedule was we were going to do his March Madness bracket on ESPN because it was the thing he liked doing. It was authentic to him. He loved basketball, and he was doing it at a time in which everyone around the country was also doing their brackets, whether they're serious sports fans or they're just like doing the office pool or the family pool. And it's like, you seem like a human, and you got to find ways to seem like a human. And if you're just reading these like poll tested talking points, you're not achieving anything. You're just reminding people why they don't like politics.
I'm curious if you have specific thoughts about the right. I don't know if it's language, talking points, or messaging that maybe Democrats are going to have to adopt, but to give some examples of what I'm identifying that isn't working well. You think about Kamala Harris's campaign and her ideas for the economy.
Mm-hmm.
When I ask people what were her ideas for the economy, almost no one can say anything. Some people do remember this idea she had about we're going to have, it's either a tax credit or deduction, I don't even remember, against expenses when you start a new business. So it's like sort of convoluted and it only applies to a small portion of the population. So when I have elected officials on, they say, no, well, we have to have a clear economic message and it has to be abundantly clear that we are the ones that are here for the middle class and here's how we're going to do it. But like, what exactly does that look like in your mind? Is it more of a language thing? Is it a policies thing? Like, here are the 3 specific things. Because the exit polling did show what Bernie Sanders said, which was overall, the feeling wasn't, when I think about Harris and Trump, I feel really strongly that Harris has my back as a middle class person. Voters didn't buy that. So like, what do you think actually needs to be said?
I think it's a combination of things. One, it is, we have to have like more emotionally evocative language. Like, this is what Bernie does very well, right? Where it's like, you get it. People know Medicare for all. They probably know he wants to tax the rich. Maybe they know about a billionaire tax, but what they get is He thinks rich people and corporations are screwing you over, and he's going to do something about it. And so just like being that clear, AOC did that very well in the Fight for Oligarchy tour they did together. So that's one. Two, when we have policies, I think we have to have our policy, like this is going to drive my governing friends, my policy friends from the White House and campaigns insane. We need less serious policies. We need policies that are simpler, easy to understand. Like this is the beauty of Zohran Mamdani's campaign is people, free buses and city-run grocery stores do a couple of things. They're not going to solve obviously not going to solve all the affordability problems, but they're easy to understand. They send a message to people that he's doing something that they get. And they're controversial enough that they piss off people so that then there's a conversation about it. Like if you I know all the people who wrote Kamala Harris's housing tax credits and her business tax credits and all of that, and they're as smart as can be. And they're the people you want in her White House when it comes time to save the economy. But it can't be a white paper. It's got to be an idea that people get. Obama had this idea that he did in the State of the Union in 2012. It was called the Buffett rule, which was simply that no one could pay a tax that Warren Buffett's secretary was paying a lower tax rate than he did, and we can't allow that to happen. And that she sat in the box from the State of the Union. Like that obviously doesn't solve our massively convoluted broken tax system, but it's something people got. And so we need some ideas that are simple. They get them. They may not like pass all of the like the nerdy checks and from the policy wonks, but they send a message. I mean, that's what Build the Wall is. It's an absurd policy, but it sent a very clear message to people what Trump's priorities were. And we need some policies like that.
As you talk about that, I'm reminded of, I'm from Argentina originally. It's been a long time since Argentina had what I would call a good president. And one of the guys that wasn't good was this guy Macri, who's friends with Trump, actually. And he had this very visible idea, which was he built a rapid transit bus in like a very important, highly trafficked part of Buenos Aires. Yeah. And so all of these disasters were going on, corruption and terrible economic policy. But there was this like emotionally salient thing about like on 9th of July Avenue, the widest street in the world, they've got different colored lanes and these brand new buses, and they're zooming back and forth. And a lot of his defenders who couldn't really defend a lot of the stuff that he did, they would go, look at this bus. It's just phenomenal. It's fantastic. You can see it right there. And it seems that the emotional salience of some of this stuff seems highly relevant.
Yeah, I think we just got to be more, we have to grab people's attention, and you need policies that do that.
You worked for Al Gore. You mentioned working for Barack Obama. You've seen a lot of different campaigns.
Yeah.
I would love to hear from you about, from the outside, there was this perception I had and some others had that like the first couple of weeks of Kamala Harris's campaign had a certain vibe or feel.
Yeah.
And then after the 2 weeks, something happened and it got less good, less dynamic, less exciting, etc. What happens within a campaign? Like when these shifts happen, is it that someone is brought in and they go, we got to do everything completely differently? Is it that there's a push-pull for the candidate's support or the candidate's confidence, and then the candidate goes, we're going to go more this way than that way? Like what causes these kind of shifts in campaigns?
So I'm also looking at this from the outside in. Like, I got a lot of friends who work there, but I don't have like all the inside detail. They
Yep.
sort of, like, give me the dirt. But I'd say a couple of things. One, every campaign is a reflection on the candidate. So if the candidate is risk averse, the campaign's risk averse. Like you just can't. If a candidate politician, and most politicians, particularly Democratic politicians, are risk averse, no matter how brilliant the campaign team is, no matter how great the messaging is, you can't change that factor of it. That was, and you saw some of that in her 2019 primary race. So that's one. Two, I think when they first started, they really benefited from, they were playing with house money. Like one day she's vice president, next day she's in this race. Like who knows what else can happen. I remember she went to headquarters right after Biden dropped out, and she basically got the nomination, and she went there and she gave this great speech. It seems like off the cuff. There was maybe she had some written notes, but it was not like put together by a team of 100 people. She just kind of like did her thing, and it was quite good. And then I think as you get more people and you are naturally risk averse, and my friends who worked for John Kerry say the similar, is that you can always find someone who will validate your risk aversion to avoid doing something. And so I think that sort of defaulted to the way she was. And I mean, she was hampered in the sense that she took on this campaign. She kept most of the leadership of the old campaign. Then she
Right.
added in her new people. And that's not probably a particularly efficient way to make decisions quickly. And that probably hampered them. But, you kind of saw it in her media choices, right? She was very just risk averse in how much media she did. I mean, she did some like Call Her Daddy was a bold choice, I think. Even if it did read more like or seem more like a political interview than a Call Her Daddy episode. But I think it was, and they didn't, and I think the other thing I think is fair is she could never really articulate like why she was doing this, which I say in her defense, she didn't choose to do it, right? It wasn't like normally you have a year of the primary campaign and you're out there and you're talking to people, you're doing a million town halls, a million interviews, and you can like hone your rationale. She just had to do it from a standing start. But like that like why me? Why I'm doing this, why I'm the unique person, like is critical to everything you do. It like is the framework for why you make every decision. And that seemed a little bit like a vacuum. Even if she did, I will say in her defense, deliver in big moments like the convention speech and the debate.
Did for my context to know how to kind of frame this, did you read either or both of Jake Tapper's book and Jonathan Allen's book?
I read Jake Tapper's book. I have not read Jonathan Allen's book.
Okay. There's some overlap in the two books
Yeah.
about the degree to which there was a lot going on behind the scenes in the Democratic Party in terms of people who didn't seem that thrilled with the idea of Kamala Harris kind of being the default. The books are sort of mixed in my mind now because I read them very close together, but the narrative about former President Obama resisting an endorsement and sort of working behind the scenes, maybe for a mini primary. And then this dramatic scene of Chuck Schumer going to Biden's Delaware home and basically saying like, you got to do it. And he was crying on the way home, all these sort of factions.
Sure.
Is your sense either from your experience working in the Democratic Party or from people you've spoken to or whatever, right? You can tell us what it's based on. Is your sense that that is typical in every election, or that there was something about these particular circumstances with Biden saying, I'm stepping back, and Harris looking for the delegates and getting them, that generated that within the party?
I think it's unique. Like, I would say it's primarily unique to this election. This is obviously, we throw around the term unprecedented a lot these days, but I think this is legitimately unprecedented. You have the incumbent president of the United States drop out 107 days or whatever it is before the election.
Yep.
And I think there was, people in that month period between the debate and when Biden actually dropped out, or 3 weeks, whatever it was, I was part of a gazillion conversations, not with anyone who was making any decisions, just really like idle chatter among Democratic operatives and staffers and politicians about like, should he do it? Should Biden drop out? If he does drop out, can Kamala Harris pull it off? Is she the right person? And those conversations didn't amount to anything because what ultimately happened is no one else ran. The question on like the mini primary and all of that is, I think there was this sense among some people in the party, and I had some of these conversations, that was if other people wanted to run, right? But that could be Gavin Newsom, that could be Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro, Wes Moore, whoever else who decided they want to throw their hat in the ring. The Democratic Party needed a process. So it didn't look like you're just handing it to one person over the other, because that would be probably politically unwise and lead to a divided party. But then ultimately, no one decided, much like the primary against Biden that never materialized, no one wanted to run against Harris, probably because they recognized what most people did, which is she was probably going to win any sort of whatever that process was, she would win. So I think this one is unique. The closest analogous thing, I think, is when Obama and Clinton, at least from my experience, were in this primary that would not end in 2008. And it was pretty clear that Obama was going to win. And then there were some real discussions behind the scenes from a lot of party players about how do we land this thing in a way that allows the party to reunite when the primary is over, right? How can you, because it was, you have a black candidate, you have someone running to be the first female president. How do you, how's the process play out in the right way? And that's the kind of things where like the equivalent of the time where Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi to Schumer and the others involved this time. And they got involved in a way, but they couldn't, but they weren't like, it was all sort of trying to just land the plane. I think that's what was happening here. I think that people were they just had no idea what to expect. And I think Kamala Harris knocked it out of the park, as you mentioned, those first 2 weeks. And then people were like, this is what we're doing. We're on board. And there was this really added benefit that was very important, which was she could accept the Biden money that was raised in the Biden campaign machinery. Anyone else would have had to start from zero, which would have been a very hard thing to do in a short period of time.
I want to talk a little bit about, I guess, 2028. It sounds so weird because it's 2025, but there are sort of some interesting and unique things that are going on right now. I've been starting to get emails from people. So let me back up. I've been talking about who's visibly fighting right now. Obviously, Gavin Newsom's fighting right now.
Yeah.
Whether it's a fight that will make a difference in 26, different people have different opinions. What's the math? What's the numbers? But in terms of like visibly fighting right now, Newsom's definitely there. Wes Moore's name has become increasingly interesting. I find him formidable. I saw him speak in a relatively small event a few months ago and was super impressed.
Yeah.
He just said yesterday, I'm not running in 2028.
Yeah.
There's a pretty interesting bench. Josh Shapiro and Gretchen Whitmer are interesting. There's people in the Senate. There's people in the House. I mean, there's a lot of kind of names right now. But I'm starting to get emails from people who are saying, the DNC has already decided it's Newsom. Moore's getting out of the way. He's clearing a path. It's just up to the DNC. Take the scenario however you want, but to what degree does the DNC decide, and particularly like this early?
The DNC decides nothing. I'll be very clear. There is no greater dissonance in American political discourse than the power people think the DNC has and the power it actually has. What DNC does have one important role to play here, which is for the first time, we don't know what the calendar is going to be, right? We've been on this Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina thing for, a couple of decades now. That got tossed up in the air after the Iowa caucus meltdown of 2020. And then Biden, with the DNC under Biden, moving South Carolina to the front of the line. That was a one-time thing. So now it's an open question as to what's going to happen. That is a place where the DNC could theoretically put their thumb on the scale, but they won't. The people who make that decision is the Rules and Bylaws Committee. They don't have, or maybe there's a subcommittee on nominating. But either way, we're not in a situation where this is like Hillary Clinton running or the sitting vice president running where they control the DNC. It's really the DNC has no real influences. They're definitely not throwing it to Gavin Newsom. Maybe they came out and said the first primary was in San Francisco, the second primary was in Sacramento, and the third primary was in LA. You could say that, but in general, they're going to try to come up with the thing that will be the best for 2028, both the primary and then helping in the general by having, we've been in this thing where we spend all these money in states like Iowa and we organize the state to within an inch of its life, and then we leave and never come back again for 4 years. And so that's why you may get like a Michigan or something near the front of the line this time. But the DNC really has no power to rig it for anyone. And I promise anyone, they're not trying to. If they were trying to, they could not. And so, there are no power brokers who pick who the nominees are, especially now that people raise grassroots money so well through the internet. So you can't even get a collective of donors who could raise enough money to really tip it for one person or else. It's like the people will really get to decide here, especially as we change the superdelegate rules too. So that's the one thing I'm not worried about is the Democratic, you're watching the Democratic Party, so it looks like they can bring something right now. So, yeah.
So in that context then, is your inkling that as early as it is, something really is happening with Newsom here? Or what do you make of the Newsom thing? Because his approval in California is up, his name recognition's up, his approval nationally is up. He's doing this. By the way, I'm participating in this fundraiser for the redistricting thing on Wednesday, which I think it's the only thing going on that I can really get behind, the No Kings protests and that. So I'm doing what I can. What do you think about this as a play for 28?
I would stipulate that I'm not participating in that fundraiser, but I think my podcast co-hosts are, and we've been involved in it. I've talked to them. I think that Newsom has done a very good job as being one of the only Democrats who's found a way to actually get attention in this moment. And it was happening before the redistricting thing. It's happening after the redistricting thing. I think the rise, and he also is speaking in a language that the base agrees with. And the base, I don't mean the left. I don't mean the center. I mean the people who are deeply engaged in politics, who think Donald Trump is bringing our country to an end, and a bunch of Democrats are sort of fiddling Rome burns, and he is actually He's saying Trump may not there might not be election 28. He is, I think, reflecting how the base feels. And I saw someone make this point, I can't remember who, which is when people want a Democrat who's fighting, the only Democrat they're seeing fighting is Newsom because he's the only one who's breaking through. Whether that will last him until the first, even if the election kicks off in early 2027, I'm kind of skeptical. But I think what he has shown, I don't think this boost will like carry him above anyone else, but it has opened doors for him, and it does show some inherent political media talent that people are going to be looking for in a candidate.
There is, one of the things I hear from the people in my audience who don't like Newsom is this guy's he's a centrist. He's center left or he's center, whatever. Let me zoom out a little bit from that. There's been a very spirited debate within my audience over the last week or so about, in the past, my view always was like, I'm not a socialist. I'm a social democrat. That's a form of capitalism. It's sort of like Denmark. Okay, everybody gets that. I've thought, for the most part, the socialists and I are kind of on the same page right now because our next stop is the same one. They want the bus to keep going. I want the bus to get to my stop and sort of that's it. Yeah. And so we're definitely working together here. But there's a growing section of my audience that is now kind of like, some of these actual socialists, from them staying home rather than voting Harris over Trump, from them kind of being indifferent to the impact of the Supreme Court when it was Hillary v. Trump. Are we really part of the same movement? Do we really want the same things? I don't know. I think I'm kind of making clear the question as to how fragmented or united are these different parts of the left. What's your kind of view?
I think the Democratic Party is quite divided. We're divided on every lane. We're divided ideologically. We are divided on issues. We're divided on which politicians are good. We're still like, it happens in our audience. It happens online. We're still divided over Joe Biden's decision to drop out. Right.
Is that right? There are people who think he should have stayed in.
Yeah. I mean, you saw that when Hunter Biden did his interview with Channel 5 and he came very aggressively after me and my co-host, like that was a thing that somehow, because Hunter made the point that, which I'm very sympathetic to feeling this way about your own father, that if he had stayed in the race, he would have won. And so there is this people, Jamie Harrison, the former DNC chair, carries this point a lot, that the reason we lost is because Democrats melted down instead of sticking with Biden. Like that's a conversation that goes on, just kind of like we debated the 2016 primary for a decade, sometimes still do, I guess. I joke that we're divided over Ezra Klein's latest book, right? Like we're fighting over abundance versus populism and all of that. I think I've tried to simplify this in my own head that the real division is not left, right. It's not any individual. Those are all real division on the issue. But the central divide is whether you think Trump is an existential threat to democracy, to our freedoms, to our rights, to the country as we know it, or whether you think he is really, really bad, but largely survivable. Like that's how I think of it between Newsom and Whitmer. That's how I sort of think about the people who sat out because, or plan to continue to sit out because they didn't get their policy purposes. That could be center, that could be left, or whatever it is. And that's sort of the main divide, because it helps you sort of understand why Newsom takes this giant step to do the redistricting, which is putting a fair amount of skin in the game, and Schumer votes to fund the government in April or March, whenever that was. Why Newsom's doing what he's doing, J.B. Pritzker is talking the way he's talking, Murphy's talking the way he's talking, and why Gretchen Whitmer is meeting with Trump to deliver for the state of Michigan, right? It's like two understandings of the world that explain, I think, I think that's the division that is preventing us as a party organization from mounting a unified, vociferous response to Trump.
Couple quick things in the last few minutes we have. One on Pritzker, one on Newsom, two people you just mentioned. Did you see the interview where Pritzker was asked whether he's on Ozempic?
I saw that the write-up, but I didn't see the actual interview. What did he say?
Well, he just said, he was very direct. He goes, I don't think I'm going to answer that. And then he goes, because there are people who are taking the drugs and Yeah. I wanted to ask you about your take on it as a political answer, because it seemed, I loved the directness where he goes, I'm not going to answer that. His explanation didn't really make sense. Like the fact that some people are on it and some people aren't means he's not going to tell us. It was kind of like, oh, I guess he tries not to shame anybody one way or the other. But like, I was going to ask you whether it made sense from the standpoint of he was clearly prepared for the question. Did the preparation make sense?
Yeah, that is a classic comms prep of a politician is if we decide we're not going to answer the question. So we're going to give you the best answer, non-answer possible, which is almost always unsatisfactory. Right? It's like, do I care if he's on Ozempic? No. Should anyone care? Probably not. Will people be annoying about it because he didn't answer the question? Probably.
Right. Okay, fair. On Newsom.
Yeah.
If he loses, if California decides not to do the redistricting in the vote, which is sort of like Newsom loses it, right? How damaging is that to his potential 28 run? Like, does the outcome of this November on that matter for his chances in 28?
I think it would not end if his measure were to fail. It would not end his campaign. It would. I mean, he could bounce back from that. It would be a blow, because it would say something about his political operation. It would be an opportunity cost, because if he actually passed it, he would get a boost.
Right.
I don't think he's taking a risk by doing it. I really don't think it would like ruin his campaign. I think people actually appreciate him actually trying when others did not. But it would be. I think it's hard to argue it wouldn't be a blow of some kind.
Last thing I want to ask you, as we get closer to this primary, do you, on a personal level, do you think it's good / do you want independent shows like Pod Save and my show and Brian Tyler Cohen and everybody? Should we be coming out early in the primary and pushing one candidate over another? Like, do you think it would be good for people to go, okay, the Pod Save guys are behind this candidate, and then David Pakman's behind that candidate? Or do you think that the movement is not well served by everybody coming out early and endorsing primary candidates?
I think everyone should do what they want to do, and because like what makes independent media and content creation work for people is the authenticity. So if like you or Brian were to decide you like this candidate or this candidate, like I would probably encourage you to just go for it. We have not had any real detailed discussions about how we're going to handle 2028. In 2020, we interviewed every single candidate except Joe Biden, who didn't come on our podcast. And we wanted to be a forum where they could come on. We were doing special 1 hour episodes, around 1 hour episodes. So we could have like an extended conversation to introduce our audience to people. It was very beneficial for Pete Buttigieg. Did it very early in the process when no one knew who he was. And he did great. It was one of those things. It was like in that moment where Pete was sort of taking off and our audience was like, who is this guy? And so I think I'm assuming we'll probably do something like that again. That we never got to a point in 2020 where you could see maybe as it narrows down and you get to the end and there's like two people and you have a strong feeling about one or the other, you could possibly get involved. For us, there were 4 of us, so it may be weird if like 2 of us were like, we're for Newsom, the other 2 were like, we're for Pritzker. But we haven't thought about it a lot. But I think if people think someone is good and they want to do it, I would kind of encourage them to do it, because I think it's probably, it's what you're, it's maybe challenging for your audience. We saw that in 2020 for us, because there were people who, even if we didn't have our thumb on the scale, when we like criticized a candidate or were not happy with their debate performance, the supporters of candidate X were always upset with us, and like there was fair abstention. But if you think someone really is the best chance to win and the best president, like probably go for it.
I want to hear from our audiences too. Like, are you interested in these shows all staking out who they're kind of supporting? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, I think so.
We've been speaking with Dan Pfeiffer. Dan, so good to talk to you. Yeah. I really appreciate your time, and I'd love to do this again.
Yeah, this was so much fun. Great to finally connect.
All right, take care.
You too.
Bye.
Donald Trump has already packed his second-term cabinet with loyalists. He's threatened deportation as political punishment. He's expanded executive authority in ways we have not seen in modern history. These are real changes that are happening right now. And what's even more alarming is that a lot of the media is either glossing over the worst of it or they're reframing it so it all sounds a little more palatable. And that is why I use Ground News. This is a news comparison tool. Doesn't just feed you headlines. It shows you here's how different outlets, left, right, center, are covering the same story. And this is one of the few tools I know of that can really help you detect the political spin, the bias, catch stories that your usual sources might downplay or not cover at all, on everything from immigration policy to economic shifts. If you want to get a bigger picture, a broader picture of what's being reported, Ground News is an invaluable source to keep you informed. And Ground News is offering my audience 40% off their top tier Vantage plan. You'll only pay $5 a month. Go to ground.news/Pakman or enter the code Pakman in the app to get started. The link is in the description. After a very long absence from press briefings, Karoline Leavitt is back, the White House press secretary, and she is just getting smothered with questions about the Epstein letter and Trump and the economy and foreign policy. She took an unexplained absence from press briefings during a time where things were not exactly going particularly well for this administration, and she was just peppered with questions. Here is a reporter saying, wait a second, you're arguing Trump didn't sign the letter, he didn't do anything. What's the theory as to where it came from? And this is a great question. It's a natural question. Are you saying someone just fabricated it? What exactly is the argument? Karoline Leavitt, if you're looking for common sense and depth and coherence, doesn't exactly provide it.
If he didn't sign these, if you said he didn't sign the birthday card, he didn't do this, he also didn't do the check, those were in documents from the estate. So what is the working theory as to why he's in them?
The president has one of the most famous signatures in the world, and he has for many, many years. You know that, Maggie, you've covered him for a long time, long before he assumed this office when he was a businessman in New York. The president did not write that letter. He did not sign those documents. He maintains that position, and that position will be argued in court by his lawyers. The president is very confident he is going to win this case.
If he didn't,
you can maintain the position, but that doesn't make it true. And you really need to understand the context of that letter to realize how unlikely Karoline Leavitt's version of the story is. Because if it's a forgery, they're not denying that the Epstein birthday book in total is a forgery, right? That birthday book contains letters, drawings, and notes and cards from a whole bunch of people to Jeffrey Epstein. This letter from Trump was in the book. The book was provided by the estate of Jeffrey Epstein. So the theory would require that somehow, while the book is real, only Trump's letter was forged and inserted and then released at great risk, civil risk, and potentially even criminal risk, depending on what we were to find out about the hypothetical forgery. It just doesn't make any sense. And Karoline Leavitt, I assume, must realize it. She was then asked more about the signature, and it was pointed out, like, the signature is being analyzed and it's Trump's signature. She doesn't like it.
About the Epstein case, would the White House support a professional handwriting expert review of the document released yesterday to prove that it's not the president's signature?
Sure, we would support that. And in fact, I have already seen many forensic analysts of signatures coming out. I believe it was the Daily Signal that published a piece with 3 separate signature analysts.
Understand that the Daily Signal is tied to the Heritage Foundation, the originator of Project 2025.
Who said that this absolutely was not the president's authentic signature, and we have maintained that position all along. The president did not write this letter, he did not sign this letter, and that's why the president's external legal team is aggressively pursuing litigation against the Wall Street Journal, and they will continue to.
About the Epstein case.
So I guess she says there is some handwriting expert that she can bring in, but of course independent handwriting experts have already verified all of it. Next, she is asked about this oversized check that was given, like the purchase for a depreciated woman. I mean, just vile stuff. And Karoline Leavitt says that's also fake.
Follow up on immigration.
Thanks, Caroline. One of the other documents released by the House Oversight Committee contained a photo of Jeffrey Epstein holding an oversized check that was made out to him in the check from the president for $22,000 for a fully depreciated woman. I wondered if the president has any recollection of that, or what you guys make of that photo that was included in those documents.
Did you see the signature on that check? It is not Donald Trump's signature. It is absolutely not. The president did not sign that check.
It's just not Trump. It is all made up. Every single bit of it is made up. Then Leavitt goes on the attack. And we knew that she would do this. Leavitt goes, oh, Democrats only care about this because they need to attack Trump with a new hoax. It's all made up by Democrats. And of course, remember that the birthday book was released by Epstein's estate. Are you saying Democrats interfered with the birthday book and inserted pages into it? None of it makes sense. It's sort of one of these, he didn't say it. If he did, he didn't mean it. If he meant it, you didn't understand it. And if you understood it, you didn't understand that it was a joke.
Epstein files are back in the news because a lot of Americans feel that that Jeffrey Epstein's victims never got justice. Does the president care about these victims? Do you think he can does he want to deliver more justice for them, and is he willing to meet with them?
The president cares about victims of all crimes, and that's
Oh, yeah.
why Republicans in the Trump Department of Justice have done more in terms of transparency when it comes to the Epstein case than any prior administration. And why are the Democrats all of a sudden caring about this? It's because they are desperately trying to concoct a hoax to smear the president of the United States. We have seen this time and time again. Ro Khanna and all of these other Democrats, they could have cared about those victims 4 years ago when Joe Biden was in office. They could have pushed for transparency then. Unfortunately, the Democrats are using victims as political pawns to try to smear and to push a hoax against the president of the United States. And I will get you numbers on the amount of child predators that this administration and this FBI and this Department of Justice have locked up under President Trump's leadership. We have done more than any president to protect victims of crime, especially disgusting, heinous sexual crimes. And that includes the deportation of illegal aliens who are perpetrating these crimes against innocent victims in our country right now today. And that.
So Caroline, desperate to talk about other things, and says it's all been made up and crafted by Democrats. Does anybody believe that? Polling says people don't believe that. Even half of Republicans believe that there's a cover up here. Now, just one other note on the stuff that Trump has said, and then something MAGA Mike Johnson has said. Caroline Leavitt was asked about Trump's comment, which we played yesterday, where Trump goes, it's so safe in D.C. that now if a man and woman have a little fight at home, they're saying it's a crime. It was seen as totally dismissive of domestic violence, and Caroline Leavitt attempting to clean that up as well.
Yesterday, the president spoke about D.C. crime and talked about how there was virtually none. And then he expressed frustration about things that take place in the home they call crime. He said, they'll do anything they can to find something. If a man has a little fight with the wife, they say this is crime. See, now I can't claim 100%. Exactly what crimes was the president referring to?
He wasn't referring to crimes. That's exactly the point he was making, Ouija. What the president is saying is that these crimes will be made up and reported as a crime to undermine the great work that the federal task force is doing to reduce crime in Washington, D.C. And
now I have to hand it to her. This is her best defense spin attempt of all of this stuff, where she goes, no. That's his whole point. Things that aren't crimes, Democrats will seize on them and say, look, here's a crime, because the real crimes have been diminished to zero. It's total horseshit, but it is it's her best planned attempt at spinning. And then finally, before we move on to the economy, after MAGA Mike Johnson said Trump is an FBI informant on Epstein, Leavitt goes, actually, he's not.
Mike Johnson, he came out and said that the president was an FBI informant. Do you know what he meant by that, if it's not true?
I can affirm that is not true. I think the speaker was referring to the fact that President Trump kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago property for reasons the president has already discussed.
All right. So Caroline Leavitt resurfaces for a disastrous press briefing. Let's now focus in on the discussion with her about the economy. As the cracks in the economy become impossible to miss, a downward revision of nearly 1 million jobs over the last year, job hiring numbers declining, manufacturing index lowest in 5 years, the prices of groceries that were going to come down, not happening, travel and tourism down dramatically. As all of this is happening, in some circles, you're starting to hear talk of a depression. And a reporter brought this up yesterday to Caroline Leavitt during the press briefing. and said all of this stuff Trump is doing, is there any concern that he is pushing us towards a depression? Here's how she answered.
Thanks, Caroline. Following up on Ed, now that we have these revised jobs numbers, is the president concerned at all that price spikes, stemming from his tariffs through the end of the year might actually be driving the country towards a depression or a recession? What I'm asking is he committed to these policies now that we know how faulty the jobs data was?
The president is committed to his policies because his policies are working, Christian. And there have been a lot of people fear-mongering about inflation in this room, but it just has not come to fruition. On a monthly basis, CPI inflation has now come in at or below the market's expectation for 6 consecutive months, every month that President Trump has been in office. Overall, inflation has run at a 1.9% average pace in the president's first 6 months in office. I would have told all of you that in January, you would not have believed me, but those are the facts and those are the numbers. And we also see many other positive signs.
And by the way, I apologize that the audio and video are out of sync here. I realize that it's just the clip.
In economic indicators like real GDP. In the second quarter, it was revised up to 3.3%. That beat the market's expectation. We know there's a capital spending boom right now, which we know is one of the greatest economic indicators of job growth. We know wages are increasing at a far faster pace than they were under the previous administration. We see productivity in the second quarter was also revised up to a strong 3.3%.
So listen, she is rattling off numbers about productivity and other things. One of the things we learned during the Biden presidency was even if the economic indicators are good, if people don't feel that the economy is good, if polling shows that Americans overall believe the economy is going in the wrong direction, you're going to have a political problem. And one of the things that Caroline Leavitt and the Trump administration are doing now, which is arguably the same mistake that the Biden people made, is believing that if you just insist that everything's awesome, people will believe that it is awesome. Now, there are people who will believe it when Trump says it, but not when Biden used to say it. Fine, I'm not talking about that. If you look at the fact that there are now more people looking for jobs than jobs available, that is a clear change from the way it used to be. That has to have an impact on people that they will notice. And so Caroline Leavitt can kind of deflect. I can assure you that when somebody can't afford an unexpected $400 expense, they're not going to go, well, listen, it's fine because Caroline Leavitt told me productivity is up at the national level. It doesn't work that way. And this is bipartisan. This was a problem for Biden, and it's becoming a problem for Donald Trump. Now, the other issue that they're having is they're going back and forth on when can you even trust the numbers? We talked about, was it Bessent or Kevin Hassett saying, the downward revisions are really just not believable. But the August numbers aren't that bad, and you'll see when those are revised upwards. Wait, so we can trust upward revisions, but not downward revisions? That doesn't make any sense. Caroline Leavitt was asked a relevant question. When will we be able to, when are we going to see the jobs numbers increase? And she goes, listen, we need truthful data here.
Time frame. The president has said a year. Secretary Bessent said maybe the fourth quarter. When can we expect these numbers to increase?
Well, first, we need accurate numbers. We need truthful and honest data, which is why the president took the monumental step to try and appoint and confirm new leadership at the BLS so we can have data that we can actually rely on. And that's what the president is doing, and we hope that his nominee will soon be confirmed. Charlie.
Let me translate that for you. We are still struggling to find someone who can cook the books enough so that the jobs picture looks good, but isn't going to cook the books in such an obvious way that no one's going to believe it. They're worried about the direction of the economy, and you can tell from these answers. Donald Trump went to a DC restaurant last night and was brutally booed and heckled. The genesis of all of this was that the other day, a reporter said to Trump, you talk about everybody's going to these restaurants in DC and it's all awesome and the vibe is great. You've never gone out to a restaurant in DC for dinner since you've been president. And Trump goes, how do you know that? And of course, the answer is, well, we know that because the whereabouts and movements of the president are a matter of public record. So Donald Trump comes in and he decides, I'm going to go to a DC restaurant. Here he is entering Joe's yesterday. This really didn't go well. Let's go through it in sequence.
Thank you. a safe city now.
Great job.
Can you imagine? We did it in 12 days, but now it's almost a month. We have a safe city. So that's good. Enjoy yourself. You won't be mugged going home, okay? Have a good time, everybody.
Brandon B.
Brandon B.
Hey, thanks for that business card.
Yeah, I gave it to you.
Good stuff. I like it. Thanks.
Where's your family?
They're back in Atlanta.
Oh, okay. Say hello, bro. Have a good time, everybody.
All right, so in comes Trump. Now, as someone who is familiar with Joe's stone crab was not struggling before this. In fact, I think it's the Miami one. I think I wouldn't be right if I say this about the DC one, but I think the Miami Joe Stone Crab is like the most profitable restaurant in the country or something like that. It's just like completely crazy. Joe Stone Crab in Vegas is doing fine. Joe Stone Crab in DC is doing fine. Trump showing up there and going, now that it's safe, we can all go to Joe Stone Crab. It's very stupid if you know anything about like the whole space. There's some interesting, actually there's an interesting Harvard Business Review case about Joe's. I'm getting off track, but Joe's being busy is not exactly a testament to the safety or lack thereof of anything. But it got a little difficult for Trump, where hecklers who apparently were not cleared out by Secret Service, hecklers started yelling that Trump is the Hitler of our time.
Trump is the Hitler of our time! What do you want your legacy to be? Let's go.
And then as you see that, maybe you can see it better in this other clip. Trump starts signaling with his hand for Secret Service to clear these people out.
Trump is the Hitler of our time! What do you want your legacy to be? Let's go.
All right, so Trump doesn't like it. Trump wants them out. And protesters just chanting it relentlessly and brutally.
Enjoy your dinner.
All right, and then unfurling Palestinian flags, which I'm sure made a really big impression on Donald Trump. Now, the sort of ironic thing about this entire stunt is that Laura Ingraham went on TV last night and went, it's so safe now that the president can go to a restaurant. But see if you realize the absurdity of what she said.
Fox News alert, Donald Trump is out on the town. Dinner with members of his cabinet in D.C., showing it's safe to walk around the city after deploying the National Guard. Crime, as we know, has plummeted in the city, but President Trump talked to reporters just a few moments ago.
Yeah, you know, the irony, I get that it's the president, okay? D.C. is so safe that Trump was able to go for 5 minutes to a restaurant with a full advance team prepping prepping the location, multiple concentric circles of Secret Service protection, and then DC police. The entire 2x2 block radius around the place cordoned off, and a dozen black SUVs blocking streets and sidewalks. It's so safe that Donald Trump is able to go under those circumstances. Now, I understand I'm kind of tongue in cheek, right? Because of course presidents have security. The thing is that it doesn't really prove anything about the safety of DC one way or the other, that in this way, Donald Trump is able to go. The reason Trump never went to DC restaurants before is because he doesn't want to. And because as a general thing, I think Secret Service sees it as a security risk to put him in those environments. But the idea that this proves the safety of it, pathetic and laughable, but Trump getting a very rude awakening there and saying, get the protesters out of here. We've got a great bonus show for you today. RFK Jr. has a new idea for what causes mass shootings: video games. We're back at it. We will also talk about soda marketing and sugar's effect on the brain. And we're also going to talk about the first state that is going to make childcare free. The state is New Mexico. All of those stories and more on the bonus show. Sign up at joinpakman.com. Get my Substack at substack.davidpakman.com. See you then.